Hey, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. This is Roman Polnar, and I want to welcome you to our Financial Aid Wednesdays, where we talk about financial aid tips to help you find more money to pay for college, avoid student debt, and see your kids all the way through graduation, where they can get started in life without having to worry about years of paying off student loans. And today, on this episode, today is September 1st. We're talking about, wrong one. My apologies. We're going to talk about the two big heavyweights, if you will, in the financial aid form, which are the two main financial aid forms, the FAFSA and the CSS Profile. Because I get a lot of questions about these two forms. The two biggest questions are these: which one is better? And then which one should I use? Well, the answer is they're both good. Sometimes you're going to use only one of them, and sometimes you'll use both. It's really important to understand the difference between the two and which one should you use. When do you use them? And how do you use them correctly so you can actually get the money from the financial aid system to pay for college? Because at the end of the day, these two forms are the most important forms. They're the keys to unlocking financial aid to help you pay for college. And today we're going to talk about the similarities, we're going to talk about their differences, and we're going to talk about their uses. Like every Wednesday, I do these kind of deeper dives into important financial aid topics to really take them apart and help you make better decisions, better equip yourself to know exactly what to do to get the money that you ultimately need, should get, and will get if you do these things correctly. So, for those of you watching live, I just want to say quickly, welcome. Thanks for being here. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to keep monitoring to make sure that if you do have comments, I'll be able to answer your questions. So if I say something that you want me to go over again, or if I miss saying something, or if you've got a question, don't hesitate to drop your questions in the comments. And if you're going to be watching a replay, do the same thing. A member of my team or I will continue monitoring this even after it is going to be posted as a recording, and we'll answer your questions. All right, so let's talk about the similarities first. I'm going to talk about 5 similarities. I'm going to talk about 5 differences and tell you how to use these to the best of your ability. So, number 1 similarity is that both are online forms. They used to be in paper. No one fills them out in paper anymore. I think you could probably still track down a copy, but recommend using the online form. It's just a lot easier. But aside from both being online forms, they both do the same thing, which is they evaluate your need for financial assistance. They're effectively calculators that calculate your eligibility for financial aid. And that is the most important and biggest similarity that these forms have. The second biggest similarity is that they both collect very similar information in order to calculate your need for financial assistance by looking at these 3 factors. They look at your family information, they look at your income, they look at your savings, your investments, basically your assets, in order to figure out what your eligibility for need or for financial assistance is. The third similarity is they figure out what you should be able to pay for college per year. Now, this is where there are going to be some differences. I'm going to cover them in just a minute, but they both more or less do the same thing. So they look at your family situation, they look at your income, they look at your savings, and then they calculate what they think you should be able to pay for college per year. And this is where the fourth similarity comes in, which is, drumroll, they both have flaws in the way that they calculate what they think you should be able to pay. And I would say in most cases, the flaw is that they overcalculate what they think you should be able to pay. And one of the reasons this happens is, these forms have their own complexities. They calculate things a bit differently, even though they look at the same information, they look at it in different ways. And because most parents are busy, and their kids, don't yet have the life experience to understand how all these financial things work, um, it's easy to make mistakes. And unless you know exactly what to do, those little mistakes will add up, and they will effectively make people pay more because the financial aid forms are going to interpret the information that you're putting on incorrectly. No fault of your own, by the way. It's just, they're complicated. So oftentimes, if you don't know exactly what to do, most families are going to be expected to pay more. But if you apply correctly, and if you can avoid making those small mistakes, you will get all of the financial aid that you should, that you are eligible to receive. And that's exactly why we do these financial aid Wednesdays, is we talk about how do you apply correctly? How do you avoid making those mistakes? How do you do things in just the right way and in the right order at the right time so you can get the most amount of financial aid that your family is eligible to receive? So that's exactly what we're talking about today. So don't worry. We'll figure this out together. But speaking of applying correctly, this is where similarity number 5 comes in. Both of these forms become available at the start of the financial aid season, which is every October 1st. Uh, and you generally submit these forms a year before you actually need the money. So, what does that mean? If you have let's say, if you want to get financial aid for the first year of your student's college, well, then you need to start figuring out and submitting these forms around October 1st of the senior year in high school. If you have a college student right now, let's say they're in their first year, right? As of right now, September 1st, let's say they're in college right now, then you will need to submit these financial aid forms to get financial aid for their second year of college. All right. Now, if you have younger kids, let's say they're freshmen or sophomore or juniors in high school, stay tuned because you're in the best position because you can learn, right, all of the right things to do and how to avoid making all the common mistakes. And you've got a year or 2 years to start positioning yourself and pre-qualifying yourself for the most amount of money so that when your turn comes October 1st of whatever year, you will be in the best position to qualify for the most amount of money. So keep that in mind. Those are the 5 main similarities about the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Now let's talk about the differences. And this is where I think the kind of the rubber meets the road, because this is where most people get confused about these two forms. And I'm going to clarify the 5 biggest differences between the two. So the first biggest difference is that the FAFSA gives you money, or at least makes you eligible for money from the government, and it's administered by virtually all colleges. There are 6,298 colleges that use the FAFSA as a way of determining your eligibility for financial aid from the government. And that's where most of the money actually comes from, is from the government. Now, the CSS profile, on the other hand, is only used by 241 private colleges, and they give out their own money. So they actually want you to complete this second form called the CSS profile, and this is what determines your eligibility for their what's called institutional dollars. This is money that they have in their endowment funds, for example. And this is the money that they will give out oftentimes in addition to the financial aid you can get from the government. Now, if you're wondering um, which of these colleges or which colleges use the CSS profile, I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now so you could see it, that has a link, or sorry, has a list of all of these 241 private colleges that actually use the CSS profile, just so you know. All right, difference number 2. They're different in length, and they're also different in complexity. Now, the FAFSA has I think it has 108 questions as of right now. Now, the good news is most people are not going to have to fill out all 108 questions because there's logic built into the online form. So, depending on how you answer each question, it automatically will kind of reroute you to complete more or less questions. So, if you have relatively simple financial situation, you'll have to complete fewer than 108 questions. And if you have more complexity, well, you might end up having to complete all of them. But the CSS profile is more complex and it's 2.5 times as long. There are 241 questions that you potentially may have to answer. But again, there is this intuitive logic built in to the online form. So you usually wouldn't have to do all of them. But I do want to caution you that if your student is going to be applying to colleges that will need both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, complete the FAFSA first. It's just easier to complete, and you'll already have half of the information that you're going to need for the CSS profile. And that's the first reason you're going to do it first. The second is because it's easier, most people actually get it done quicker. And financial aid is given out on a first come, first served basis. So you want to be one of the first in line that starts to form after October 1st to get your financial aid awards. And because the best type of financial aid goes out first, or is given out first, you definitely want to be among the first in line. And because the FAFSA takes less time, most people can complete it quicker, and that gets you in line first. And then you use the information, and for the most part, it's going to be copy and paste, anyways, to complete the CSS profile. All right. Let's go to difference number two. Difference number three, which is what do these forms actually do? Well, we've already talked about in the similarities that they both calculate your eligibility for financial aid, right? Or your need for financial assistance, but they do it in different ways. And these are the most different, or these are the biggest differences, excuse me. So the FAFSA calculates something called your EFC, which stands for your expected family contribution. Once you submit your FAFSA, it will calculate your EFC, and that EFC is a dollar amount that the government thinks you should be able to pay for college based upon the financial information that you just recorded on that form. And that EFC number is going to get stored in that FAFSA database so that when your student applies to colleges, all of those colleges will just download that data from the FAFSA and they'll know exactly how much you should be expected to come up with out of your pocket every single year. And this is the information, this is the number that they're going to use to calculate your financial aid. And this is the financial aid formula. This is what every single college is going to use. They look at the total cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution equals the amount of need or amount of financial need that you have. All right. So, cost of attendance is the cost of attending 1 year of college. And this includes everything: tuition, room and board, books, supplies, fees. It's basically it's all in. It's what would a family have to pay? And every college is different. You can find out what the cost of attendance is for each one of the colleges. I'm going to share with you a helpful link that we recommend families use. But at the end of the day, this is the simple financial aid formula that every single financial aid office of every single college that uses the FAFSA is going to use. Now, the CSS profile is different. And before I show you that difference, I see there's a comment. So let me take a quick look. All right. Now I think I've just answered that question. All right. So the difference with CSS profile is there is no EFC. Like we actually don't know um, how they calculate and how they determine your eligibility for financial need. Um, every college that uses the CSS profile will calculate their own equivalent of a EFC, but there's this no broadly used term. We just don't know. And so this is a bit of a challenge for a lot of families, right? Because if you're completing the FAFSA, which almost all of you are going to do, after you submit it, say waiting 3, 4, 5 days, you can log back in and download something called the Student Aid Report. That Student Aid Report is a summary of all of the questions and all of your answers. And at the very top, it's going to give you your expected family contribution as a number. So you're going to be able to actually know well in advance exactly how much the government thinks you should pay for college and what number was sent to every single one of the colleges. So you can easily do the math, right? Whether you do it online or on a piece of paper, you're going to look at your expected family contribution and you're going to subtract that number from the total cost of every college that your student applied to. So you'll know exactly how much financial aid you should expect. You can't do that with CSS Profile because they don't give you a number. It's not published anywhere. And so you don't usually find out what your financial aid is going to be from the CSS schools until after you get the acceptance and the financial aid award letter. All right, difference number 4. Let's talk about the different type of aid that is given because this is another big difference. Now, the FAFSA gives out both free money as well as self-help money. And I shouldn't actually say the FAFSA gives out because the FAFSA doesn't give anything out. The FAFSA just calculates the amount that they think you should pay. And then the government, both federal and state, and then colleges will give you money to bridge that gap between the cost and your expected family contribution. But the money that you get from the government can either be free money, things like grants, things like scholarships, and things like tuition discounts. Money that literally lowers cost of college. Or the government can give you self-help financial aid, things like student loans, parent loans, or work study. Self-help is basically money you either have to borrow and then later pay back, or it's money you have to work for. And unfortunately, to the government, these two forms of financial aid are exactly the same. Uh, to you, they're not, right? You want every dollar of financial aid to be in free money, money that you get to use and never have to pay back or work for. That's the best type of financial aid. And that's the kind of financial aid we want you to get. But it's important to know that some colleges will give out um, self-help aid. They'll give a bunch of student loans. And that's another reason. Let me just pause here for a second because I do want to highlight this point over and over and over, which is free money is given out on a first come, first serve basis. And every single year, starting October 1st, 18 million families are going to submit their FAFSA, which means in order of submission, 18 million people are getting into that financial aid line looking for money. And you want to be as close to the front of that line as you can because you want to get that free money before it's given out. All right. The CSS profile, on the other hand, this is a big win for all of those schools that use the CSS profile. They only give out free money. There's no such thing as filling out the CSS profile and getting loans. If you're going to get financial aid from a college that uses the CSS profile, it's guaranteed to be free money. Again, scholarships, grants, tuition discounts, money that literally lowers your out-of-pocket cost. All right, difference number 5. The FAFSA is a free form, and it's administered by the Department of Education. It's a government agency that puts this form together every single year. It's the government that ends up calculating and processing everything, reporting everything to colleges. It doesn't cost you a dime. In fact, free is in the name or in the FAFSA name because FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Um, never pay to have the FAFSA completed for you. Uh, It's a free form. It's not that hard to fill out if you know what to do, which is hopefully what we're going to be teaching you. And actually, if a quick commercial break, if you want help to understand how the FAFSA works, how to position yourself, and how to position your finances to qualify for the most amount of financial aid, how to complete FAFSA correctly without making the most common mistakes, check out our course that's going to be coming online soon at FAFSAkit.com. If somebody wouldn't mind putting that in the chat, I'd really appreciate that. It's a FAFSAkit.com, and that's going to be coming out soon. But you can go there now and download a free ebook that's going to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes families make and how to avoid them. But you don't have to pay to anyone to actually complete it for you. You should complete the FAFSA yourself. Now, the CSS profile, on the other hand, is there is a cost, and it's administered by a non-government agency. The College Board is a non-for-profit. It's been around, I think, since 1900. It's also the same organization that brings you the SATs and the AP tests. But there is a cost. It's not a huge cost, but there is a cost. It's I think it's $25 to fill out the form itself, and then for every college that you want to share that information to, it's an extra $16. So again, not a huge cost, but if you're trying to watch your budget, um, it's worth knowing. And especially now with the Common App, kids are applying now to 10, 15, 20, 30 schools because the Common App makes that easy. But if you have to, pay $16 times 10, 15, 20, or 30 schools, it can add up. So just be mindful of that. So we just covered 5 similarities. We've covered 5 differences. And the question is, well, which one do you need? Well, look at the colleges. If you're working with your student, if let's say they're a junior and they're just going to start picking colleges this year, if you've got a high school senior, you might already have a list of colleges. So just take a look at the list and then figure out if these colleges want you to submit the FAFSA, the CSS profile, or both. And by the way, here's a good resource. collegedata.com is an awesome free website. And we often recommend people use it for a number of things, and this is one of them. Because when you go to collegedata.com, you can actually see which financial aid form they want. Let me see if I can actually share my screen, and I'll show you how to do that. It just dawned on me that I can do that relatively easily. Let's hope I can without screwing things up. All right, here we go. So let's go to collegedata.com. So this is the homepage. You can sign up, and I don't know that there's any big reason to. I think you can look for scholarships if you sign up, but otherwise you don't even have to. Right here in the middle of the screen, enter the college name. So I'll put in the college that I went to, the University of San Francisco. And it literally has every single college in here. So go to the financial tab. It's the 3rd tab over at the top. And actually, here's another thing. At the very, very top, it gives you the cost of attendance. That's the COA. That's the number that you want to have if you want to estimate the amount of financial aid you'd be eligible for by subtracting your EFC from the cost of attendance. This gives you that number, as well as it gives you the breakdown. So if your student is going to potentially live at home or off campus, you can see what the difference would be. By the way, when I went to school, USF was really expensive, and I think it was $28,000 or $27,000. It's insane how much cost of colleges have grown in the last 20 years. Just outrageous. But I'll save that rant for another day. So if you scroll down, it tells you right here which forms are required. USF uses the FAFSA. It even gives you the college code. This is the number that you would put on the FAFSA in order to make sure that USF, in this case, would actually get the EFC. So really, really good website to use. I'll do another training. Actually, I've done one in the past about how to use this free tool and get a lot of information about the kind of financial aid colleges award and how to look for colleges that'll actually give you more financial aid than others because they don't all give you the money that you need. In this example, you could see that USF only gives 68% of the money that you qualify for. So if you remember that formula, cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution equals the need. Just to make the numbers really easy, let's say I'm applying to a college that costs $50,000 and my expected family contribution is 10,000. Well, I'd be eligible on paper for 40,000 of financial aid. But if I'm applying to this school that only meets 68%, well, I'm not going to get all of that 40,000. I'm only going to get 68% of that 48,000. So, obviously, if you're looking for the most amount of financial aid that you can get, look for colleges that'll meet 100% of this of one's need. So, anyways, hopefully this is helpful, and you can search for colleges this way. All right, let's go back. Um, and another thing that actually I wanted to share with you is here's a list. I'm going to drop this in the chat. But if you're looking for more information about the FAFSA, the government actually put together a pretty good website. I just put that into the chat. It talks a lot about how to apply for financial aid. There are different steps. I think I'll do a training one of these weeks if you all find it helpful on actually how to apply for the FAFSA and go through maybe not necessarily question by question, but at least point out some of the biggest ones. So if you think that's going to help you, let me know in the comments. Just say yes to FAFSA overview or something like that. In this way, I'll know that if you want it, I'll do it one of these days. So the other link I wanted to share with you is if you want to learn more about the CSS profile, go to the College Board. Excellent website as well. Has a lot of good information. It doesn't actually tell you the step by step what you should and what you shouldn't do. Uh, in order to get the most amount of money. That's the unfortunate challenge with our financial aid system is that it's pretty clear if you know all of the rules and all the laws and if you've read all the guidebooks, but it's clear as mud if you've never done it before. And unfortunately, because of that, because they don't tell you what to do exactly or how to do things correctly. They don't tell you what order to do things. They don't tell you exactly when. And because of that, most families just inevitably make simple mistakes that end up costing them money. It ends up costing them lost financial aid. So if you want to make sure that you get all of the financial aid that you qualify for, all the financial aid for that you need and should get, keep following this. I mean, go to FAFSAkit.com. It's going to come out soon and it gives you a ton of information that you need to make sure you're doing all of these right things. And when I say a ton, it just as soon as I said it made me feel like, oh my God, that's overwhelming. A ton is too much. Well, the good thing is that we put everything in these bite-sized pieces and we made a roadmap out of it. So you only have to do one thing at a time. And it's not overwhelming. It's clear and it's simple. But when you're done with it, looking back, you'll realize that you got a ton of really helpful information that helped you make actionable progress along the way and helped you get and collect all of the money that you were eligible for, that's possible to get. You would have gotten all of it. So hopefully that clarification is helpful. But if you've got any other questions, if there's anything that I didn't cover on this main topic of the FAFSA versus the CSS profile, the two biggest, most important financial aid forms in the financial aid system, let me know. Use the comment section below. You can also send us an email. Yeah, you can send an email to my team member, Rob. I'll put his email up here. Uh, sorry, Rob, if you're watching this now, I just volunteered you for some extra work. Rob is awesome and he's super busy and puts a lot of great content and is behind every single course that we put together. But if you have specific questions, feel free to email us. My email is roman@pillar6college.com, or Rob's email is right there as well. So, anyways, I hope this has been helpful. Um, if it has, give me the thumbs up so that I know. If you've got questions, put them in the comments below. And look forward to talking to you about next week. I'll send out a quick Facebook Live to see what topics you might want me to cover in the next week's Financial Aid Wednesday. But all the best to you all. Good luck. I hope you are going to find all the money that you need. We're here to help. We will continue being here to help. And have a wonderful day, y'all. Take care. Bye.